The cabin smelled of champagne and leather polish when the voice cut through it. "Ma'am, this section is for our first passengers only." Heads turned 11 of them. The woman in the charcoal suit paused mid-gesture, her pen still hovering over a tablet displaying a 3D blueprint of glass and steel. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. "I am," she said. The purser's smile stayed frozen, polished like the aisle chrome. "Your ticket, please." He glanced down at the boarding pass, as if searching for a flaw in the paper or the skin holding it. A low chime sounded overhead. "Cabin crew, prepare for departure in 11 minutes." The woman set her titanium drafting pen on the tray table. It gleamed against the white linen like a line drawn across a plan. Perfect, deliberate, unshakable. "I design buildings meant to hold," she murmured. "Let's see if this one does." A silence rolled through the cabin, dense as pressure before takeoff. Someone's phone camera blinked red in the reflection of the window. Justice hadn't moved yet, but the audience already had. Have you ever been treated like you didn't belong right, in a place you worked your whole life to reach? Before we go further, tell me, where are you listening from tonight? Are you on a flight, stuck in traffic, or just lying in bed somewhere in the world? Drop your city in the comments. And don't forget to hit subscribe, because every week, we tell stories that expose the cracks in the world's perfect design. Now take a breath. The engines are starting to hum, the cabin lights are dimming, and our architect is about to realize that injustice doesn't whisper at boards right beside her. Let's get back to the story. The murmur spread before she could answer. She must have sneaked in. The words were a whisper, but the whisper carried like a draft that slips under every closed door. The purser leaned closer, his tone coated in courtesy.
"Just confirming, ma'am. Sometimes economy passengers get confused with our boarding zones."
Confused. The word hung there, absurd in its politeness. She offered the boarding pass again, the gold edge gleaming under the cabin light. "Seat 1A, she said evenly. "Yes, I see that." His smile never cracked. "You understand we have certain standards to maintain for our premium guests." Her throat tightened, not from anger, but from recognition. She had heard that same tone before at a hotel desk in Paris, in a gallery in Milan, at every place that said exclusive but meant exclusionary. She pressed her palm against the smooth glass of her tablet. The blueprint glowed beneath her hand. A curved atrium rising toward a skylight. Every line balanced, every beam accounted for. Cabin crew. Final preparations. 10 minutes to departure. 10 minutes. 10 minutes to decide whether to stay quiet or speak. The purser straightened, calling over a younger attendant. "Check the manifest again, please. It's probably a mix-up." The attendant hesitated, eyes flicking between the woman and the tablet still displaying her design. I think she's... "Just check." The purser cut in, voice firm but still polished. The way people in power are trained to sound when they're sure they'll be obeyed. Across the aisle, a man in a linen blazer whispered into his phone camera, trying to look casual. The red light blinked once live. The woman caught her own reflection in the window. Calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that only comes from years of knowing a reaction would cost more than silence. Her pen rolled toward her fingers. She caught it gently, like something fragile. "You know," she said softly, eyes on the purser but voice low enough for herself, "buildings collapse when one part carries all the weight." He didn't understand the metaphor, but he felt the shift in her tone. His smile faltered. Someone coughed. Another passenger looked down, embarrassed. The phone's recording light blinked faster, like a heartbeat. 9 minutes. The woman leaned back, tablet glowing faint blue against her lap. She traced a single line across the screen, a beam that cut straight through the heart of the structure, holding it all together. Her hands didn't shake, but the silence in the cabin did. The air inside the cabin had changed. It wasn't temperature. It was texture thicker now, the way a room feels before a storm. The purser's radio clicked at his shoulder. He lowered his voice, But the woman still heard. Still not resolved. Passenger in 1A insists it's her seat. A pause, then a male voice through static. We can deboard her if needed. Keep it professional. He straightened, smoothing his tie, then turned to her with that polished half-smile again. Please calm down, ma'am. The words weren't loud, but they landed hard. She hadn't moved, hadn't raised her voice. The accusation wasn't in what he said it was, in what he assumed. Her lips parted, but the breath she drew in was steady, measured. Around her, the soundscape sharpened. A champagne cork in 2C. A zipper sliding. The faint electronic hum of phones recording. The live icon blinked on 3 screens now. 40 viewers became 400. She spoke softly, almost conversational. You think I'm upset? Her tone was even, but her eyes didn't blink. I'm assessing your structure. He frowned. I'm sorry? Every system has stress points, she said. Yours is tone. The purser flushed, glancing toward a woman in the galley, who quickly looked away. Ma'am, this isn't necessary. We're just doing our job. I know, she replied. That's the problem. For a moment, even the engines seemed quieter. 8 minutes to departure. She turned the tablet toward herself again. The blueprint glowed pale blue across her lap, a cathedral-like atrium. She zoomed in on a single beam, then whispered, more to the design than to him, balance holds the impossible. Her fingers trembled once, just once, then steadied. The boot titanium rested beside her thumb. A detail line gleamed across the glass, slicing through the atrium sketch like a horizon. From somewhere behind, a woman murmured, She's handling it better than I would. The comment wasn't meant to be heard, but it carried anyway, landing like a quiet defense. The purser stiffened. I'm sorry if this feels personal, he said, each word clipped, but we have to ensure the comfort of all passengers. You mean the comfort of some? I beg your pardon? She looked up, her eyes dark and steady, held his for a full second longer than politeness allowed. You designed this service to protect your image. I designed for gravity. We're not the same. A soft electronic ping overhead. 8 minutes to final door close. Her tablet chimed with a message. She didn't need to check to know it was from her assistant, probably another meeting reminder, another board decision waiting somewhere in Dubai or London. Worlds where her title mattered. Here, it didn't. She exhaled through her nose, folded the tablet shut. Across the aisle, one of the passengers whispered to another, That's Naomi L. Green, the architect. She built the Accra Tower. The whisper wasn't meant as gossip. It was revelation. The purser's brows furrowed, a flicker of uncertainty in his voice. You're an architect? She met his gaze without hesitation. Among other things. His jaw tightened. He was losing control of the narrative. The cameras caught it. One passenger zoomed in. The woman adjusted the sleeve of her suit. Tone quiet, but precise. Calm is structural. It's what holds under pressure. No one spoke after that. Even the hum of the engines felt reverent, as if the air itself had taken a step back. Then, softly, a child's voice from row 3. Mom, why's everyone looking at her? No one answered. The countdown kept ticking somewhere behind the cockpit door. 7 minutes left. Enough time for the world to see exactly what collapse looks like before it happens. The cabin lights dimmed, bathing the rows in a warm amber that softened the sharp edges of everything. Voices, metal, even judgment. For the first time since boarding, she let her shoulders fall. The air pressed close around her, full of perfume and static electricity, the faint hiss of recirculated oxygen. Across the aisle, a boy with an oversized hoodie peeked at her tablet. She turned it slightly so he could see the glowing arcs of her design. His eyes widened. Is that a spaceship? She almost smiled. A building, she said, but it flies in its own way. The boy nodded solemnly, as if understanding something sacred, then ducked back behind his mother's arm. The small moment left a warmth that cut through the metallic chill. Cabin crew, final preparations, 8 minutes to departure. 8 minutes again, but this time, the number didn't sound like a threat. It sounded like a rhythm, steady, patient, inevitable. Her tablet screen filled with a 3D rendering of the Harmony Pavilion, her most personal design. A structure of glass ribbons and steel arches, each line calculated to hold weight without showing strain. It had taken her 5 years to finish, but only one public interview for a journalist to call it a triumph of restraint by a woman who understands silence. Silence. The word stung differently now. The purser passed by her seat, still avoiding her eyes. His polished shoes reflected the ambient light like small mirrors, distorted, precise. She could feel the stiffness in his movement, professional guilt trying to masquerade as duty. She didn't speak. Instead, she studied the reflection of her own face in the window. Dark skin, defined eyes, hair pulled into a sculpted knot. The glass layered her over the night sky, as if her image were part of the plane's frame. The camera light on the far side of the aisle still blinked. Red. Constant. Watching. She closed her tablet halfway, allowing the reflection of the Harmony Pavilion to merge with the cabin interior. For an instant, it looked like the plane itself was inside her design steel bones, holding a fragile shell of light and expectation. Her throat tightened again, but this time it wasn't humiliation. It was something older. The same feeling she'd had as a girl watching her mother scrub marble floors in an office tower her daughter would one day own. Everything carries weight. Some of it visible, most of it not. From the intercom, a calm male voice. "Flight attendants, secure the cabin for takeoff." The phrase was routine, but to her, it sounded architectural. Secure the structure, balance the load, maintain equilibrium. She turned the tablet back on. Her pen hovered above the blueprint as if drawing could stabilize the moment. Slowly, she sketched a small adjustment in the design. A beam shifted, a curve softened, a space widened. Her breath synchronized with the strokes measured, intentional. The purser's reflection passed again in the glass, this time slower, almost hesitant. He didn't speak, but his presence lingered like unfinished geometry. She felt the attention of the cabin fading, fatigue replacing curiosity. The live streamers stopped whispering, phones tilted downward, notifications pinging as the feed slowed. The world outside was still watching, but the room itself had exhaled. She whispered to herself, "Harmony holds when tension finds purpose." The words weren't for anyone else, but they anchored her. Somewhere above, a luggage latch clicked shut, like a period at the end of a sentence. She reached for the pen again, but instead of writing, she rested it across her palm, feeling its cool weight, metal and light, pressure and grace. Her eyes drifted toward the front, where the curtain to the galley swayed slightly with the movement of air. For a moment, she could almost imagine the purser standing behind it, trying to make sense of the shape he'd made of her. The boy from earlier peeked again, whispering to his mother, "She builds things that don't fall." The mother smiled, unsure if he was right. She didn't correct him. Outside the window, the runway lights blurred into ribbons of white. 7 minutes. Enough time to remember who she was before anyone tried to redesign her. A tremor ran through the floor panels as the aircraft's turbines spun higher, a low vibration threading through the soles of her shoes. The cabin lights brightened in sequence one aisle, then the next, like a system testing its load. The purser stood 2 rows ahead, whispering into his radio. His jaw was tight, his posture immaculate. Around him, silence had become an audience. From her seat, the woman Naomi watched him without blinking. The blueprint still glowed on her tablet, casting pale light across her fingers. He turned. "Ma'am, I'm afraid if this continues, we may have to deboard you before departure." There it was, the official threat. The final line between inconvenience and humiliation. Naomi folded the tablet closed, the sound sharp in the still air. "And what exactly is this?" she asked. The purser hesitated. "Disruption of service." A passenger 2 seats back scoffed softly. Someone else whispered, "You've got to be kidding me."
Naomi's voice stayed level. I paid for this seat. I boarded with this ticket. Your service seems to be disrupting itself. The purser flushed, then leaned forward slightly. Ma'am, please don't make this harder than it has to be. Naomi tilted her head. Harder? She said it slowly, the word turning over like a blueprint under review. That's relative. Some of us were born holding weight you can't even see. For the first time, he faltered. His next sentence came out too fast, too sharp. You're being emotional. And there it was, the trigger wrapped in civility. Naomi exhaled. Her heart wasn't racing. It was steady, heavy, measured, like an engineer's pulse before a test. She looked up at him and said, No, I'm being precise. The line sliced through the air, clean, cold, undeniable. The passengers felt it before they understood it. Someone's phone slipped. The live stream jumped to 5,000 viewers. Comments flooded. That's composure. She's right. They're profiling her. The purser looked around, realizing he was no longer in control of the room. The cameras, once neutral, were now witnesses. Every breath he took felt documented. Naomi leaned forward slightly. You said comfort, didn't you? You're here to protect comfort. Yes, he said, unsure. Whose? He blinked. Excuse me? She didn't raise her voice. When a space makes one person comfortable by making another small, it's already failed its design. Her words landed like steel beams settling into place. The cabin seemed to tilt, not physically, but morally. A woman across the aisle nodded slowly. She's right, she said aloud, surprising even herself. The purser's eyes darted to her, then back to Naomi. This isn't about... It's always about design, Naomi interrupted. You build a structure to hold people, or to keep them out. The choice is yours. The hum of the engines deepened. The intercom crackled. We're 3 minutes behind schedule. Please finalize cabin status. 3 minutes. The countdown wasn't just procedural, now it was moral. The purser swallowed, stepping back, voice low. If I let this stand, I could lose my job. Naomi met his gaze, softer now. Then you should ask yourself what it is you're standing for. Her tone wasn't cruel, it was surgical, designed to expose, not destroy. He froze, unsure whether to leave or apologize. The younger attendant beside him whispered, Sir, maybe we should just let it go. Naomi turned back to her window. Outside, floodlights washed the tarmac in sterile white. Inside, the atmosphere held a strange equilibrium. No victory, no defeat, just balance rediscovered. She breathed out. Balance holds the impossible, she murmured again, this time almost to the glass. Behind her, someone started to clap once, then stopped, realizing it wasn't the moment yet. But the gesture hung there, unfinished, waiting. On the live stream, a caption popped up from a viewer. She's not angry, she's architectural. Naomi allowed herself a quiet smile that no one saw. 3 minutes. Enough time for the world to decide what kind of structure it wanted to be part of. The engines settled into a low roar, steady as a heartbeat. The cabin shimmered under the cold fluorescence that flattened every color into compliance. Naomi sat perfectly still, her hands folded over the tablet on her lap. Across the aisle, the purser stood frozen between duty and doubt. His radio crackled again. A voice came through measured. Male, corporate, cabin crew. This is ground operations. Confirm status of passenger issue in first. His thumb hesitated over the button. Still unresolved, sir. Company policy requires visual confirmation of ticket and demeanor. Proceed per standard protocol. The words hit like an invisible slap. Visual confirmation. Demeanor. Naomi turned her head slightly, meeting the purser's eyes. You heard that, didn't you? He didn't answer. I didn't need to. You did. From the corner of the cabin, the red recording lights multiplied. 3, 5, 7. Phones angled toward them like an audience at a trial. A woman whispered to her companion. They're still going? Her companion nodded, whispering back, It's live.
20,000 watching now. Naomi's gaze stayed steady. You're not the only one on record anymore. The purser's jaw twitched. This isn't about record, ma'am. It's about order. Order, she repeated, almost like she was testing the word's weight. You mean the kind you enforce or the kind you design? His silence was answer enough. Outside, rain streaked across the portholes, distorting the floodlights into trembling white veins. The whole plane seemed to hum under strain, like a structure bearing more weight than it was built for. A mechanical voice broke in over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the delay. We are awaiting final clearance before departure. 21,000 viewers. The delay was no longer logistical, it was moral. Naomi pressed the tablet's power button. The blueprint reappeared, glowing faint blue against her palms. She zoomed into the structural cross-section of the Harmony Pavilion, her design bending under simulated stress. The program displayed a bright red fault line where the beams met the arch. She traced it with her fingertip. Every system has one, she murmured. The point where image fractures under pressure. The purser shifted uneasily. Please, ma'am. But she was looking at him now. You're part of a structure too. You think you're protecting it, but it's cracking from exactly this. The radio crackled again. If escalation continues, remove the passenger quietly. We can't have disruption at departure. Gasps fluttered through the aisle. The live stream chat exploded. Remove her? Someone said aloud. On what grounds? The purser's face went pale. Ma'am, I need you to... To what? Naomi asked, her tone calm but glacial. To make myself small enough to fit your comfort zone? Silence. Then you'll have to redesign the space. The sentence landed like a verdict. The younger attendant from earlier swallowed hard. Sir, she whispered to the purser, we can't do this. Not with everyone watching. The purser closed his eyes for a second too long. His hand dropped from the radio. Outside, lightning flashed, briefly illuminating the cabin like an X-ray faces. Fear, guilt, defiance, all caught in the same frame. Naomi's own reflection shimmered in the window. Behind her face, the camera lights blinked like distant stars. 3 minutes. The engines idled, restless. The structure held, but only barely. She whispered half to herself, the thing about balance, it's not about stillness. It's about tension, finding purpose. Her words weren't a declaration. They were an equation, quiet, exact, undeniable. In the live stream comments, someone typed, she's designing justice in real time. 25,000 watching now. The purser turned away, one hand over his mouth, the headset trembling slightly. He looked less like an authority and more like a man realizing he was standing on the wrong side of history. Naomi leaned back, eyes closing briefly. The low hum of the plane filled the silence that followed. The cabin wasn't calm. It was balanced, barely, temporarily. But for the first time, balance was in her favor. The intercom crackled again, this time with the clipped tension of a voice trying to stay professional. Cabin crew, final minute before door closure. 1 minute. The purser's hand hovered over the latch on the boarding door, caught between duty and collapse. The cabin was a field of eyes, 40 rows of judgment, 80,000 more streaming live through tiny screens. Naomi felt it before she saw it. The shift. That subtle recalibration of space, when truth begins to outweigh authority. Her reflection in the window seemed sharper now, more defined against the flood of cabin light. She could see the purser's posture faltering in the glass, the way his voice trembled when he spoke. Ma'am, he said finally, please understand. We have procedures. If you just step aside, we can sort this out after takeoff. She turned her head slowly. You've had 11 minutes to sort it out. He blinked. Now you have one. Her tone wasn't raised, but it carried clean, commanding, resonant in the pressurized air. A murmur rippled through the cabin. Someone whispered, she's not moving. Another voice, Good for her. Naomi stood not abruptly, but with the slow precision of someone taking her rightful place in a structure she built herself. The cabin lights caught the edges of her charcoal suit. The fabric shimmered like steel under tension. The purser instinctively stepped back. "Please sit down, miss." "Green," she said. "Naomi L. Green." Recognition flickered. Someone gasped. Another passenger said, "She's the architect from the Africa Pavilion." Naomi nodded once. "And I don't build walls." The words hit like impact tremors through the rows. The purser tried again, voice cracking. "You're causing a scene." "I'm revealing one." For a moment, neither moved. The only sound was the hum of the engines, the slow mechanical breath of a machine waiting for permission to fly. "Your company said this section is for first passengers only," she said, her voice even. "Look again." She tapped her boarding pass once, crisp against the metal armrest. The sound echoed unnaturally loud in the cabin. "Every structure tells you what it values by what it holds," she continued. "You can build beauty that excludes or integrity that endures. Which one do you work for?" The purser's lips parted, but no sound came out. The livestream chat exploded. "She's preaching truth. Design is justice. 80K watching, don't you dare touch her." The younger attendant whispered, "Sir, this is everywhere now." The purser froze. He knew she was right not just in logic, but in optics. Every second of hesitation was a confession. Naomi exhaled, then turned slightly, including the watching passengers in her gaze. "The structure doesn't fail because of pressure," she said softly. "It fails because the wrong people hold the weight." The words didn't accuse, they revealed. A man in 2C, the same one who'd whispered earlier, suddenly stood. "She's right," he said. "You owe her an apology." The purser turned, startled. The man's voice emboldened others. "She has every right to that seat. Stop embarrassing yourselves." Dozens of murmurs overlapped until the cabin itself seemed to vibrate with collective conscience. Naomi didn't smile, but the stillness around her felt earned like tension finally finding purpose. The intercom clicked again. "Flight crew, hold departure. Ground control requests delay pending passenger review." A small miracle disguised as procedure. The purser lowered his hand. "We'll resolve this," he muttered, retreating a step. Naomi sat back down, calm, composed. "Good. Start with the structure." Outside, rain sheeted across the window, refracting the runway lights into ribbons of silver like beams, realigning themselves. Inside, the cabin breathed as one. 1 minute had passed. The flight was delayed. But something heavier had finally lifted. The red light above the door blinked twice, signaling the end of the countdown. 0. The flight hadn't left the ground, but something in the air had already taken off. Naomi stood again. Her movement was calm, deliberate, an architect's adjustment before the structure finally settles. The purser froze, one hand still gripping the metal edge of the galley door, as if anchoring himself to something solid. 80,000 people were watching. Inside the cabin, it was silent enough to hear the faint tick of the pressure gauge behind the wall. "You people think you can buy a seat and own the cabin," he blurted, the words escaping before he could stop them. The sound hit the air like glass shattering. Naomi blinked once. Slowly, the line hung there, ugly and fragile. Someone gasped. A woman whispered, "Did he just say?" Naomi stepped forward, just enough for her shadow to fall across the aisle between them. "I don't buy space," she said softly. "I build it." Her tone was measured, but the air trembled. "And right now, you're standing in something I designed." He stared at her, uncomprehending at first. Then realization, the slow burn of humiliation crossed his face. "Miss Green, I quote, 'You guard images,'" she continued, cutting him off. Voice low but steady. "I create foundations. You serve appearances. I serve gravity. Do you understand the difference?" The cabin pulsed with silence. No one dared move. Even the engines seemed to hold their breath. Naomi's eyes never left him. This cabin isn't a cathedral of privilege. It's a structure of transit. People enter, people leave, but dignity should stay in place. The livestream comments flooded faster than the screen could refresh. She's rewriting architecture into ethics. Justice, live at 38,000 feet. This is history. The purser's voice cracked. You don't understand, the pressure we're under. Image is everything. Naomi's reply was quiet, but it filled the cabin. Then maybe you should stop building your image on someone else's silence. A few passengers nodded. A man near the front muttered, "Amen to that." Outside, thunder rolled, shaking the fuselage. The sound vibrated through the floor and up her spine. The plane trembled, as if echoing the moral quake happening inside it. The intercom pinged. A crisp corporate voice broke in. "Cabin crew, hold all actions. Ground control requests communication with lead attendant immediately." The purser froze again, his authority dissolving in real time. His headset clicked, but he couldn't seem to lift it. Naomi looked around, the cabin faces illuminated by the cold glow of screens. Eyes wide, breaths shallow. She realized, for the first time, how far the moment had traveled beyond her. She turned back to the purser. "You're not my enemy," she said quietly, "but you're a brick in the wall that keeps standing. You can't pretend it isn't there anymore." He swallowed hard. "What do you want me to do?" "See the crack," she said, "then help fix it." For a beat, everything stilled. The red recording lights blinked, synchronized now like the slow rhythm of a heartbeat rediscovered. Then the purser lowered his eyes. "I'll call it in myself," he said, voice breaking. "You stay seated." He turned toward the intercom. The corporate voice on the other end hesitated, uncertain. The power dynamic had inverted completely. Naomi exhaled. She didn't smile. Victory wasn't what this felt like. It felt heavier, earned, but costly. The livestream counter jumped again, 90,000. Naomi looked down at her tablet. The Harmony Pavilion blueprint was still open. She traced a fingertip over one of the steel arcs where the fault line had been before she'd fixed it. The beam now held. She whispered to herself, "Every design has a moment when it stops resisting weight." Lightning flashed again, illuminating her reflection. Her face and the plane's frame fused into one human and structure, both rebuilt. She looked up at the purser one last time. "Now," she said softly, "let's rebuild the rest." Outside, rain turned the runway lights into rivers of gold. Inside, justice had finally found altitude. The engines had gone quiet. The plane sat still on the runway, a sealed capsule of breath and consequence. Cabin lights had dimmed to a low amber, turning every reflection soft. The screens that had once streamed outrage now displayed the airline's blue logo and the frozen word, paused. Naomi sat where she'd been the whole time. 1A, hands folded, eyes on the window. Rain had turned the glass into liquid silver, distorting everything beyond it. The purser appeared beside her seat. Slower this time. His shoulders sagged, his tie undone, headset dangling uselessly from his collar. The authority was gone. Only a man remained. "Miss Green," he said quietly. "They're reviewing the footage. Ground controls, calling for a hold." She nodded once. "I expected that." He hesitated, then sat across the aisle, lowering himself carefully, like someone afraid the world might collapse again if he moved too fast. For a long moment, neither spoke. The only sound was the rain tapping against the fuselage, a rhythm almost kind. Finally, he said, "My father worked for this airline. Maintenance crew. 30 years. They fired him after a client complained he looked too rough to be in the hangar." Naomi turned to face him. "He never flew," the purser continued, voice cracking. "He used to stand outside the fence and watch the planes take off. He said the company just needed him to disappear to keep their image clean. So when I got this job, I promised I'd protect it, protect the image." His eyes were wet now, though he didn't cry. "I thought if I followed every rule, No one could say I didn't belong here. Naomi's chest tightened. The echo of his story resonated too precisely with her own. I used to think that too, she said softly. That if I built perfect things, I'd finally fit inside them. He looked at her, unblinking. But perfection's just another cage, she continued. It hides the cracks instead of repairing them. He swallowed hard. I didn't see it until now. You weren't supposed to, she said gently. They built it that way. The silence between them wasn't heavy anymore. It felt necessary, like the quiet after a storm, when you're not sure what's still standing, but you're grateful for what is. Outside, lightning flashed again, but softer this time, painting both their faces in brief silver. I don't hate you, Naomi said finally. I hate that we were both trained to protect something that would never protect us back. The purser exhaled shakily, the confession unraveling years of armor. I'm sorry. Naomi nodded, then looked at her tablet. The Harmony Pavilion blueprint still glowed faintly, open to the last line she'd drawn, the one reinforcing the fault line. She turned it toward him. See this? She asked. He leaned forward, brow furrowing. The beam? Every structure has a weak point. But when you fill it with the right material, not to hide it, but to acknowledge it, it becomes the strongest part. He stared at the drawing for a long time, then whispered, You make it sound easy. It's not, she said. That's why it holds. Their reflections blended on the screen, two faces illuminated by the same fragile light. From somewhere behind them, a passenger whispered, Is it over? Naomi didn't answer. She just leaned back and closed her eyes, exhaustion washing through her in slow, deliberate waves. The intercom chimed softly. All flights delayed pending procedural review. Thank you for your patience. Naomi smiled faintly. Procedural review, she murmured. That's what they call healing when they don't know the word for it. The purser chuckled once, a sound more disbelief than humor. For a brief, human second, they simply sat there together. Two people on opposite sides of the same structure, both realizing the same truth. It had never been about seats or classes or titles. It had been about weight and who was allowed to rest. The rain eased outside, leaving streaks of clarity down the window. Naomi opened her eyes again, the faint reflection of her own blueprint shimmering over the dark tarmac. Balance, cracked but holding. Morning light spilled through the cabin windows, turning the metallic interior a soft gold. The storm had passed sometime in the night. The engines were still, the passengers were quiet, those who had stayed were half asleep, phones dimmed, murmurs gone. The world, for once, had stopped moving. Naomi opened her eyes. The seatbelt light blinked faintly above her, steady, calm. Her tablet rested on her lap, screen dark but warm. The purser approached, slower this time, his uniform jacket folded over one arm. He looked smaller, human. They called, he said quietly. Corporate is initiating a review. Immediate audit of boarding and service policy. Naomi studied him, searching for irony. There was none. They said it's going public, he continued, voice low. New training, new code of conduct. He hesitated, then added, They asked if I'd stay on to help write it. For the first time, she smiled, tired, genuine. Then you should. He nodded. I told them I'd only do it if they spoke to you first. Naomi blinked. To me? They want your statement. But I told them they need your insight. You build things that hold. She let out a small breath, one that trembled into a laugh. Maybe it's time they did too. The intercom pinged softly. Attention crew. All first-class procedures are temporarily suspended pending audit review. A pause. Then, we thank all passengers for their patience and cooperation. Every passenger deserves to arrive with dignity. The echo of the first injustice hung there, rewritten, the same cadence, different soul. Naomi closed her eyes for a second, letting the sound settle into her chest.
When she opened them again, she reached for her titanium pen. The metal was cool against her fingers. She turned her tablet back on. The Harmony Pavilion filled the screen, glowing pale and precise. She zoomed in to the center where the fault line used to be and began to draw, not correcting this time, expanding, opening the space wider, thinner walls, more light. The purser watched in silence, as if witnessing something sacred. "What are you designing now?" he asked softly. She smiled faintly. "A new arrival hall. For who? For everyone." Outside, ground crews moved under the soft drizzle. The world was still gray, but lighter, now washed clean. Naomi powered down the tablet and stood. Her reflection shimmered faintly in the window, not triumphant, not broken, just balanced. As she gathered her things, she left the pen on the armrest, metal glinting in the morning light. A small monument to the night before. The purser picked it up, turned it over, and found a single line etched near the clip, a signature she must have carved long ago. "Hold what's human." He looked up, but she was already walking down the aisle, past the curtain, toward the open door where sunlight met the tarmac. The cabin was silent. The live streams were off. Only the echo remained. So what did you feel when justice finally held its shape? Was it relief, or did it sting a little to see how long it took to get there? I want to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and tell me what part of this story stayed with you. If you believe stories like this matter, like, share, and subscribe so more people can hear what justice sounds like when it finally lands. Because here, we don't just tell stories. We rebuild the structure of empathy, one voice at a time.